Let's go to our first question that comes from Peter King.
Mr Katter, considering the total votes cast for yourself, Mr Oakeshott and Mr Windsor represent less than 1% of enrolled voters, do you truly believe it is reasonable that Australians have remained in caretaker government limbo since the election as we await your collective decision? And most importantly, would you like to give us any indication now of what we may be watching on the television tomorrow night?
Well, you share the view of the Australian newspaper that said, and I quote, "Forget about the three amigos, let's go back to the people." Well, for the first time in 30 years, my friend, country Australia has a right to have a voice. And you obviously believe that we shouldn't. Now, if you're asking me to get together proposals that'll rescue and deliver the survival of rural Australia in the space of 1 week, well, yes, we've tried to do it and we haven't made a bad fist of it, I can tell you. Now, you take it up with the two leaders because we're still waiting for detailed confirmation on certain areas of policy. And if you think I haven't got the right to put that up on behalf of rural Australia, well, you're right. I haven't had the right for 30 years, people like me, but now we have got it. And I'm not going to be apologising to you or anyone else for exercising it, I can tell you.
Passionate beginning. Let me ask you, do you want to unburden yourself tonight of this terrible burden that you're carrying around as to who you're going to hand the mantle of government to?
No, look, I've put out 20 positions that I believe, policies, if you like, for rural Australia. They're not developed over a period of 7 days, I can assure you. They're developed over a period of 37 years in public life. And I know that we're not surviving, and I know these things are needed for survival. Now, I've just put those 20 questions. They've put back to me their draft response, and I will look at that draft response and decide who I will give my vote to in conjunction. I will discuss it with my two colleagues, of course, but really it is on the basis of those 20 points. I bound myself into that arrangement right from the start so that I couldn't be leaned on or pressured in any direction.
Very, very brief answer on this then. Are you telling us tonight that you still haven't made up your mind?
It's not a matter of me making up my mind. It's a matter of the two leaders making up theirs, Tony. I mean, I've made up my mind that you give me that and you'll get the gong for as Prime Minister of Australia. And if you don't, you won't. That's the power I've got, and I'm going to, let there be no doubt that I'm going to wield it to the best of my ability for those people. And I can go through some pretty ugly statistics. There will be questions later in the night, and I'll throw them up for you.
All right, good. Nick Minchin.
I mean, I don't blame the three for taking this long. They have a huge decision to make. They've got to decide who is going to govern this country for the next 3 years. I think they should take their time.
To get back to the point of the questioner, are you comfortable, in fact, that three independents representing a relatively small cross-section of the voting populace should have this power?
Well, the people have decided that.
Yeah,
I mean, the Australian people decided to give us 73 seats, Labor 72, and to have 5 independent or Green minor party candidates. So, the people have put it this way.
Come in there. The people decided that. And the front of the Australian newspaper, and I won't attack the bloke personally, the journalist, he said, "I know the people are wrong. The people better go back and get it right this time because they gave these people the right to have a say. So they got it wrong, you better go back and do it again." I mean, the absolute arrogance of that position. With all due respect, Tony, there were taints of that in what you said as well.
Well, I'm repeating the questioner as it happens. First of all, this gentleman in the front.
Yes, questions to Bob Katter. You indicated that there's about 20 questions that you've put to both parties and you're waiting on responses, and obviously there's negotiation in that process. And as we can expect, it's hardly likely you're going to get 20 out of 20 from either side. So when you're making your final decision, is it going to be 13-7, or how are you basing it? And if you don't get an adequate supply, adequate response from both parties, what do you see happening?
I've got a response from both parties, and we're analysing that response and also giving them a chance to respond to our response to their response. And I mean, it's sure nice to be in a position where they have their headaches at long last, instead of us having to sweat over every decision that we've tried to get and losing every decision. But look, I think it is timely that I say it at this stage, Tony. It is about time that Australia realised that you now have a country without any manufacturing base whatsoever. You have 16% car manufacture. You had nearly 80%, this time before all this rubbish and free market stuff came upon the scene. And no. There are people laughing because they seriously think that this free market's a great idea. Well, it sure would be a great idea if some other country on earth was doing it.
Hold your horses on that issue, because I happen to know there will be questions on that during the course of the night. Let's go. Well, and just very briefly though, just based on what you just said there, it doesn't sound like you're going to get a decision tomorrow or any time soon.
No. Let me say that I personally would, and I don't wish to be speaking for my colleagues here, even though I'm talking to them about every half hour or hour. I would think that for myself personally, I would most certainly be in a position to make a decision tomorrow morning. Both sides have had their chances and, they'll have to go on what they've put forward.
So you have made your decision then?
No, I haven't made it.
Okay. All right, we won't go backwards and forwards.
Well, I've just told you that, they're responding to the responses. So,
all right.
So, over to them.
Understandably a bit confused. Let's go to our next question. It comes from me. I'm confused. Jessica Browd.
Well, I'll help you out afterwards.
Yep, thank you.
If it takes this long to form a government, how long is it going to take to pass legislation?
Let's hear from Christine Milne on that.
Well, I think you will have negotiations.
Which I thought was a good thing.
Bob Katter, let me bring you... Are you worried that what you might do is to secure 3 years of government potentially for someone who then swings back, gets a big swing in their favour in the next election, and this whole power of the independents evaporates, the whole phenomenon disappears?
Well, Peter and I are old punching partners. I mean, shock...
I've never hit him. That's not true. I've never hit him.
Stop. Shock horror. We have to consult with people before we put legislation through. We just haven't got a big party rubber stamp that just turns it out. I mean, I don't know whether anyone notices this, but there are no questions in the Parliament. When I went in there, after being there 3 months, they said, here's your question you're going to ask. And I said, no, that's great, I'm going to ask the question. No, I've got my own question. So they said, no, that's the question you ask. I said, I'm not going to ask that question. And so I didn't ask any questions for 7 years. I'm not down there as a ventriloquist dummy rubber stamp. But that is what you got. You've got a Woolworths and Coles of democracy, and there is no other... I mean,
Does that make you Aldi? Aldi has Australian bananas.
I think I would lean more heavily to the Independent Grocers Association.
Let's hear from... I'm not sure whether Nick Minchin is Woolworths or Coles. Let's hear from Nick Minchin.
And Labor have had the same problem. So this is going to allow reform of the lower house in a way that I think will be terrific for the system that we wouldn't have got if we'd had majority government continuing.
So I've just got to ask Bob Katter this. Will the reforms last beyond the term where you actually have control over what happens?
Look, they will.
Look, whether it's the free trade policies or whether it's two-party government, I mean, maybe there are countries in Europe, but I don't know of them, that have two-party government. I mean, it is a primitive 18th century form of government. And I mean, I don't know if people read books, but if you read... but I honestly don't. Because if you've read, the great de Tocqueville, the tyranny of the majority, he constantly reiterated that theme. And so also did John Stuart Mill in On Liberty, the tyranny of majority. What you are watching here over the last 25 years is a tightening of the tyranny of the majority. And I represent the people that are particularly suffering as a result of that. And we're not Robinson Crusoe. Nick loves the two-party system. Peter loves the two-party system. Yes, because it doesn't take into account the feelings of the people. We don't get a say. I mean, 3 months ago, they decided... half a dozen people decided they didn't like the Prime Minister, so they threw him out on his head. I mean, is that democracy at work? But I'm just saying, tell me where there is a two-party system.
All right.
I'm waiting for somebody to come in here. Tell me where there's a two-party system.
All right. Let's hear from Christine.
I just wanted to take up the point about we couldn't get a discussion with a conscience vote on same-sex marriage, for example. Now we will. There will be opportunities at last. In Tasmania, we got gay law reform, gun law reform and the apology to the stolen generation in a minority Liberal government. Now, they wouldn't touch any of those as majorities. So I think it's a huge opportunity to really deal with some of the issues people want to talk about.
I got to take the good with the bad, I can see.
Nick Mitchin, I can see you barely restrained there. So.